بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, as we continue to talk about ways in which we can master marriage as Muslims, we've come to understand, hopefully, that gaining the love of your spouse is a constant and continuous endeavor. Just as fulfilling their rights is a continuous duty, seeking to endear yourself to your spouse is never ending. The rights are fulfilled constantly, and endearing yourself is as well. And previously mentioned, if you remember and you were here last week, we talked about love, showing love and affection to your spouse. And typically, we associate those instructions or that advice given to the men to show love and affection to their wives, or advice to the soon-to-be married men and giving them some insights into how they can endear themselves to their potential wives of the future. So today, we'll look at a few more elements here which would help you endear yourself to your spouse. And this may appear to be from the opposite end of the spectrum, coming from the woman's side towards her husband, or for women that are yet to marry, for their future husbands, or for those of you that are raising daughters. So it's important to note that the first and perhaps most endearing quality of a woman to her husband is that she be a God-fearing believer. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that dunya mata'un wa khayru mata'i dunya al-mar'atu salihah. He said that the world is enjoyment, and the best joy of this world is a righteous woman. You find this in Sahih Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ also said, أَرْبَعٌ مِّنَ السَّعَادَةِ, that there are 4 things which bring about happiness. And the very first one that he mentioned was al-mar'atu salihah. It's the righteous woman. In this hadith he goes on, juxtaposed to the 4 things that cause happiness, he says, وَعَرْبٌ مِّنَ الشِّقَاءِ. There are 4 things that, of course, cause misery. And the first thing that he mentioned was al-mar'atu su', an evil woman. This is reported by Imam al-Hakim in his collection of hadith. In other words, as attributed to one of the great prophets, Dawood alayhi salam, this is reported by both al-Bayhaqi and Ibn Abi Shaybah. He says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّكَ كَمَا تَزْرَعُ تَحْزُدْ. He says, you shall reap what you sow. إِنَّ الْمَرْأَةَ صَالِحَةَ لِبَعْلِهَا كَالْمَلِكِ الْمُتَوَّجِ بِالتَّاجِ al-muhawwadi bil-dhahab. He said that you're going to reap what you sow. He said the righteous woman to a man is like a king who is wearing a golden crown. وَعْلَمَ أَنَّ الْمَرْأَةَ تَسُوءُ لِبَعْلِهَا كَالْحَمْلِ الثَّقِيلِ عَلَى ظَهْرِ الشَّيْخِ الضَّعِيفِ. And that the evil woman to her husband is like a heavy load on the back of a weak old man. Brothers and sisters, the almost unbearable burden of an evil wife is almost always rooted in sinful nature, whereas the husband's pride and joy of a righteous woman is rooted in her love for Allah first and foremost, and also her knowing that just as the Prophet ﷺ commanded men to keep their duty to Allah in regards to them as women, they also know that their husband is either their paradise or hell. There was a story related by the great Imam Ahmad, in which a woman went to the Prophet ﷺ. She had something she had to address. And when she was done talking with the Prophet ﷺ, he turned to her and said, "Are you a married woman? Do you have a husband?" And she said, "Yes." He asked her, "How are you with your husband?" And she said, "There's nothing that I wouldn't do for him except something that I'm incapable of." Meaning, I will take care of my husband, I will serve my husband, I will treat him kindly and do whatever I can for him, unless it's out of the scope of my capacity. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, فَانْظُرِي أَيْنَ أَنْتِ مِنْهُ. You need to look closely, take note of where you are in regard to him. فَإِنَّمَا هُوَ جَنَّتُكِ وَنَارُكِ. Because he is either your paradise or your hell. So the righteous wife knows that her treatment of her husband is a path to faith. It's a path to salvation. It's a part of her religion. She is sure that fulfilling his rights and tending to his needs in a moderate, acceptable means is one of the keys to achieving a successful marriage and, of course, bliss in the hereafter. She knows that one of the most important things to her husband is him looking to her for respect of his leadership and what he provides for his family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, الرِّجَالُ قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. He says that men are the protectors and maintainers of women. And this is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as he says, بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ, that he has made one to excel over the other. Meaning he has appointed them with this responsibility to be the provider, the maintainer, the protector, and the leader. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put men in this position. وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. And because they spend of their wealth to take care of their families. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَالصَّالِحَاتُ قَانِتَاتٌ حَافِظَاتٌ لِلْغَيْبِ بِمَا حَفِظَ اللَّهِ. And therefore the righteous women are devoutly obedient, of course, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, and by extension to their husbands. And they guard in their husband's absence what Allah has ordered them to guard. This is Surah An-Nisa, chapter number 4, verse number 34. The good, righteous wife, brothers and sisters, knows that just as the Prophet ﷺ addressed the men, and he said that I am the best of you to your women folk, he also said, لو كنت آمرا أحدا أن يسجد لغير الله لأمرت المرأة أن تسجد لزوجها. He said, if I were to order anyone to prostrate to anyone other than Allah, I would order the wife to prostrate to her husband. وَالَّذِي نَفْسُ مُحَمَّدٍ بِيَدِهِ لَا تُؤَدِّي الْمَرْأَةُ حَقَّ رَبِّهَا حَتَّى تُؤَدِّيَ حَقَّ زَوْجِهَا. He then went on, he said, I swear by Allah, the woman does not discharge the rights of Allah until Allah has discharged the right of her husband. This is Sunan Ibn Majah. That he said, I would not order anyone to prostrate to anyone else other than Allah, except that the woman would be prostrating to her husband. Not as an object of worship here. Because for us as Muslims, that's what prostration means. But if you remember, Adam, the angels prostrated to him. Ikraman lahu, to honor, to show honor to Adam. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ is getting across here in this particular hadith. That honoring the husband is a part of our faith. Just as taking care and being benevolent to our wives is a part of our faith as well. Brothers and sisters, part of the wife's respect for her husband is to take his lead as head of household and to consult him like a team player when making decisions as a family. The Prophet ﷺ indicated this in a narration found in Sahih al-Bukhari when he says, لا يحل للمرأة أن تصوم وزوجها شاهد إلا بإذنه. That the woman is not permitted to fast while her husband is present unless he grants her permission. ولا تأذن في بيته إلا بإذنه. Nor is she to allow someone into his home without his permission. وما أنفقت من نفقة من غير أمره فإنه يؤدى إليه شطره. And if she were to spend of his wealth without his permission on charitable purposes, then he would get half of the reward. Brothers and sisters, men also want to be appreciated. Gratitude is extremely important. The loving wife seeking to endear herself to her husband knows this and is appreciative and grateful for all that he does, regardless how humble the effort may be or the outcome may be. And if she can't muster up the grace to be appreciative for his sake, then she would do it for the sake of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, لا ينظر الله تبارك وتعالى إلى امرأة لا تشكر لزوجها وهي لا تستغني عنه. He says, Allah will not look at a woman who does not thank her husband while she cannot go without him. This is found in the collection of Al-Mundhiri, his hadith. The righteous wife understands the grave nature of ingratitude and avoids such behavior at all cost. As the Prophet ﷺ, he says, أُرِيتُ النَّارِ فَإِذَا أَكْثَرُ أَهْلِهَا النِّسَاءِ يَكْفُرْنَ. He says, I was shown the hellfire, and noticed that most of its inhabitants were the women who denied. And they said, did they deny Allah? Meaning, kufr billah? And he said, يَكْفُرْنَ الْعَشِيرِ. It was a denial of their husband's care. وَيَكْفُرْنَ الْإِحْسَانِ. And the denial of kindness. He says, لَوْ أَحْسَنْتَ إِلَى إِحْدَاهُنَّ الدَّهْرِ. That you could treat them well for the entire duration of a lifetime. ثُمَّ رَأَتْ مِنْكَ شَيْءٍ قَالَتْ مَا رَأَيْتُ مِنْكَ خَيْرًا قَطْ. You go an entire lifetime treating that type of woman with kindness, benevolence, and the moment they see one thing out of place, they say, you've never done right by me. Not a single day have you done right by me. This is kufrul ashir, to deny the husband's care and kindness. The righteous woman also knows that causing harm to her husband is a great offense, not only to him, but to those in paradise awaiting his company. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, لا تؤذي امرأة زوجها في الدنيا إلا قالت زوجته من الحور العين لا تؤذيه قاتلك الله فإنما هو عندك دخيل يوشك أن يفارقك إلينا. There's no woman annoys her husband in this world without his wife from the Hurul Ain in Jannah saying, do not annoy that man. May Allah curse you. He is only a passing guest with you and is about to leave you to come to us. This is found in Musnad Imam Ahmad, Sunnah Tirmidhi, and Sunnah Ibn Majah. The righteous, loving wife also understands the challenges of marriage, knows that things will be tough from time to time. And while she looks forward to and enjoys the good times with her family, she is patient in those tough times, not giving up easily on the marriage and looking for a quick way out by seeking an unjustified divorce. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, أيما امرأة سألت زوجها طلاقا في غير ما بأس فحرام عليها رائحة الجنة. Any man who asks her husband for a divorce without just cause, the scent of paradise will be prohibited for her. This is found in Sunnah Abu Dawud and Sunnah Abi Dawud and At-Tirmidhi. فأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضى ونصلي ونسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Brothers and sisters, this week's and last week's advice is meant to be advice. It's not meant to be ammo. That's extremely important to note. If you're looking to get the best out of your marriage, you first start by taking a long, hard look at yourself first and whatever deficiencies that you may have before you take that deep dive, often much deeper than we would with our own selves, into the character flaws and idiosyncrasies of your spouse. Look at yourselves first and apply that advice to you. After all, we're only responsible for our own behavior, accountable for our own actions and not those of our spouses. We have to remember that when we want good, we have to do good. So when you load up the ammo, which is often done, and you try and weaponize the religion to fire off shots at your spouse, you're likely to get peppered a little bit along the way because they'll fire right back at you. And that's not how you make a beautiful marriage. If taken in a spirit other than what is intended by this counsel, prophetic, by the way, divinely inspired, by the way, if you don't take it in that light or that spirit, it will likely backfire right on you. Brothers and sisters, when we're dealing with each other as husband and wife, we need to remember that as husbands, our wives are not our interns that we just get to boss around. No appreciation, no return, nothing. They're not our interns. They're not our servants, our wives. They're not slaves to us, our wives. And the women, they need to remember that your husbands are not a complaint box in which you submit every little grievance that you may have. And neither of the two are punching bags to unload your stress and your burdens, whether that's verbally abusing and certainly not physically harming. We, husband and wives, believe it or not, are on the same team. We should be working together to create a harmonious atmosphere for our families. And another thing to note, I think is important before we wrap it up. I mentioned love, respect, and appreciation or gratitude. These things are not exclusive to one gender. While last week we talked about how the example of the Prophet ﷺ showing love to his wives, we often think of it in those terms. Women want love. They want to be loved. And so men, you need to do a better job loving your wife. That may be true. But guess what? Women also want to be respected and they want to be appreciated. We often think, well, men want to be respected and appreciated. But guess what, ladies? Men also want to be loved. They want to feel the same things. We each want love, respect, and appreciation. We might prioritize those things differently, but it's universal in nature. So the practices, they should be the same and reflect the outcome that is desired for everyone. If you are working on these basic things, if you focus on doing a better job with loving, respecting, and appreciating your spouse, I'm fairly confident that you'll find your marital home will become a place that you look forward to and enjoy on a daily basis. And not a place that you're only happy going back to when you note that the spouse's car is not in the driveway. So we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us and provide for us to pardon and to forgive. We ask that He bless us with the best in this life and in the next, to fill our hearts with love and mercy for one another and to relieve the burdens of those suffering around the world. Allahumma yassir wa la tu'assir wa tammim bil khair wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.